Welcome to everyone on our information session today on Kickstart. Great to have so many of you with us. I'm Diane Burdett. I'm one of the trustees of EmployabilityUK, and I'll be your host for this session. Before we get started, just a couple of small housekeeping points. Your cameras are off and your microphones are muted because it's a webinar, but please do feel free to start using the Q&A function as soon as you've got a question and you want to raise a point. And we're going to get through as many of those questions as we possibly can today. As many of you might be new to Employability UK, I thought I'd just start with a very brief film about some of the work we did in 2020. Hope you enjoyed that. So today's session is about helping you to find out more about the government's Kickstart scheme. We know that some employers have found it a bit difficult sometimes or confusing, and as an organisation who've applied for and been granted placements, as well as being an official Kickstart gateway provider, we know what that's like. The main purpose of today is for you to get your questions answered. And if we don't manage to cover all your questions today, we'll make sure that the information goes on our Kickstart hub, which is on our website. Before we get onto your questions, we'll have brief talks from Nick Riddle, Delivery Director for the Kickstart scheme at the DWP, and he'll be outlining what Kickstart's all about. Daljit Ghai, our Chief Operating Officer at Employability UK, about why we're involved and how it will benefit businesses and young people. And Jack Parsons, the UK's Chief Youth Officer, who's going to talk about how important this is for young people. So welcome to our speakers and welcome to everyone else. As you'll have seen in the video, we are dedicated to helping young people gain self-belief, aspirations and confidence to help them secure a place in the workforce. We partner with schools and youth organisations and businesses to create employee volunteering programmes that develop and support young people. Since the pandemic began, we've brought a lot of our training online, like many other people, and we're reaching far more young people with our monthly free virtual skills workshops. Now, as we all know, the pandemic has created significant challenges for young people, and resilience is at an all-time low. Recent research suggests that they are struggling more and more with mental health issues, which are exhibiting as things like irritability and moodiness and lacking in confidence and self-esteem. Sadly, there is a loss of hope about their future. Many are living at home or have returned home, and 1 in 6 have a diagnosable mental health condition. Now, we want to restore that hope and confidence and help those in particular who are at risk of long-term unemployment by supporting and using the Kickstart scheme. Our aim is to find the seed of potential in every young person. And we hope that you will want to go on that journey too, and to give a young person a chance of work experience. Now I'm going to hand over to Nick Riddle now, who is, as I say, the Delivery Director at the DWP on the Kickstart scheme. Hi, Nick. Hi, Nick.
Hi,
I'm going to leave it with you for a few minutes. Over to you.
Thanks, Diane, and hi, everyone. It's absolutely lovely to be here today. Hope wherever colleagues are, the sun is shining a little bit. I'm in South Wales, and it's hailing and sunshine and lots of different things as it does in Wales. So I'm Nick. As Diane kindly introduced me, I'm Delivery Director for the Kickstart programme, which in simple terms means I've got, I guess, operational day-to-day accountability for the running of the programme from DWP's perspective. The first thing, I'm going to talk about a few things, but the first thing I wanted to say was a massive thank you, both to EmployabilityUK for bearing with me and inviting me along today, but also to any of you guys out there that have already applied to the scheme or are thinking of applying to the scheme. Let's be honest, it has been a really difficult start. We know that in the early days, it took us a really long time to get through the applications that we had. In some ways, that was a really great problem to have because there was so much interest in the scheme, but we do know that means that a lot of people were waiting a lot longer than they should have done to get their applications through and hopefully get those young people started. So a massive thank you to everyone on this call for bearing with us and working with us as well. So I'm going to talk about two things quite briefly. I'm going to talk a bit about what the Kickstart scheme is in really simple terms, and then we can handle anything else in the Q&A. But I'm also going to talk a little bit more about the why and hopefully not cut across too much of what Jack's going to talk about in his slot. But just in terms of what Kickstart is then. So Kickstart provides full funding to create new job placements, and that's a really key thing. Might come onto that in the Q&A, for 16 to 24-year-olds that are on universal credit and are at risk of being long-term unemployed. Employers of all sizes can apply for the funding, and the funding covers 100% of the national minimum wage or the national living wage, depending on the age of the young person, for 25 hours a week. It also covers associated national insurance contributions, and it also covers employer minimum automatic enrolment contributions as well. There are two routes into the Kickstart scheme if you are an employer. We recently made some changes to the core scheme criteria, and that means that if you are an employer, you can go one of two ways. So previously, if you were offering any less than 30 Kickstart placements, you needed to come in through a Kickstart gateway. Word or two of what that is in a minute. But we relaxed that requirement, I think, in early February, and that means that employers of any size can now approach DWP direct. So if you want just one Kickstart placement, then you can come direct to us. But I think it's really important to emphasise that our existing gateway providers, of which there are a number across the country, are absolutely key partners for us in this journey. So for smaller employers in particular, in fact employers of all sizes actually, that working with a gateway can really release some of the administrative burden that you guys might be finding through coming direct to DWP. We find that a lot of our gateway providers as well provide really top-class employability support that perhaps smaller employers just don't have the time or capacity to do. So recap then, you can come in on your own accord, or equally there's a choice now of existing gateways that you can come through if you want to be represented. And then I just want to, I cover a bit of the why, if that's okay for everyone. So Diane talked about some of the impacts on the young people of the pandemic. And there was one that I read in a report that was produced by the Royal Society of Public Health on the effects of young people in the pandemic. And that was that 70% of the young people that they surveyed had found that the pandemic had made them more anxious about their future. They were worried about what the world had in store for them. And let's be honest, we know that that's been a problem in the past, and that the pandemic has affected our young people, I won't say disproportionately, but certainly very seriously. There's going to be loads and loads of other reports and statistics that could be cited, but my background as well is working with ACAS, the Employment Relations Service, and so I think we all get in this forum the importance that quality work has on our mental health and people's lives. You know, seeing as I've done when I was director in the West Midlands, you know, people come in and out of job centres, you know, the dignity that getting a job brings, the fact that people can put, you know, food on their tables, go on holiday, all of the things that probably a lot of us are fortunate enough, hopefully, not to have to worry about. You know, that experience of work gives that young person and gives any of us back, you know, hope. It just gives us a prospect of moving forward in life. And for me, I guess my key message is that Kickstart offers, I was going to say zero risk, but that's not fair. I think Kickstart offers a very low risk opportunity for businesses to try something completely new. We said that, you know, part of the core scheme criteria is that the placements have to be new, not already budgeted for, so something different. So it is an opportunity for a business to try something new in what is a very difficult operating climate, for government to fund that placement, and then to give something back to a young person who may have really been struggling through the pandemic and been seriously affected. Now, before I hand back, Diane, if that's okay, I just want to talk about, I think, what my standout moment in Kickstart was. And that was that, you know, in amongst all the furore in December of how hard it is to process the applications and people are waiting, I think I got my first good news story that came through from an employer in Derby. It's not a million miles away from EmployabilityUK, I know, and it was a picture, and I don't think I'll ever forget this, because I'm a dad. I've got, you know, a 10 and a 9-year-old, and there were people out there in similar situations, but it was a young man, and I reckon he was about 19 or 20, and he'd been out of work, I think, for about 7 or 8 months, and his mum had taken a picture of him in their back garden in Derby, and this guy had a suit on, he was smiling, he was beaming, he was up for it. He was going for that Kickstart placement, and the pride just radiated off him, and I can feel it now. You know, I looked at that and I thought, that is why we do what we do. This is why it's so important. So I would absolutely echo what Diane said. Get involved, ask questions. We're here to help. But, you know, my message is get involved. It is a great scheme. So thank you, Diane. Hand back to you.
Thanks so much, Nick. That's a great story as well. And it puts a great image, I think, in our minds as well of what we're here to do. Thank you so much for that. Next, I'm going to hand over to Daljit Ghai. Dal is the Chief Operating Officer at EmployabilityUK. Over to you, Dal.
Thank you, Diane, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much again for attending the event today. There's going to be quite a lot of thanks going on today, I guess. Firstly, thanks to Diane again for the emceeing, and Nick in particular. We really do appreciate you taking the time out to come here today to this webinar and give the perspective of DWP. So a big thank you from ourselves on that one. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the employability side of the provision, what we're doing as part of the scheme. So if we just go back to what Nick mentioned in terms of some of the difficulties which young people have faced, particularly because of the pandemic. I mean, when the scheme was initially launched and announced by the Chancellor himself, we know the situation and we knew what was happening with young people. There were many that were graduating and struggling for work. Financial impact on employers combined with redundancies that were going on made it even more difficult than ever for young people to enter the world of work and into the career paths that they wanted to go into. So a scheme such as this, which was launched off the back of that, it gave so many opportunities to so many young people. And from an Employability UK perspective, we've worked for the last 6 years tirelessly, supporting as many young people as we possibly can on enhancing their aspirations, the employability skills, core skills, life skills, giving them further opportunities to enter into whether it be employment, volunteering, apprenticeships, further education. And we've been opening those routes for them all the time we've been working. So when we heard this scheme announced, we naturally really wanted to be a part of it. We were excited to be a part of it. And we took steps towards doing that. So the first thing we've done, and Nick's mentioned about particular gateways being approved, and you can find them on government websites and various other places. But Employability UK, the first thing we've done is we've made an application and are an approved gateway provider. So we're able to make applications on behalf of employers. As Nick's mentioned, you are also free to do so directly yourself now, as per the amendment, but we are able to put those applications in on your behalf. But I guess where we really wanted to come in, and Nick touched on this, with regards to the employability provision that's required to be provided. One of the mandated requirements as part of the gateway application processes and to take on Kickstart placements is to provide them with a 6-month provision of support to help them during their placement period. And that's what we've been doing for the past 6 years. So that really, really excited us even more so. But what we wanted to do was to not just be someone who can provide a provision, we wanted to provide the absolute best provision we possibly could. So we've looked into what our current offering is and what we can put together. And you're more than welcome to go onto our website, employabilityuk.org, and onto the Kickstart Hub, which has been created. And there is information on there about our provision itself. But there's 2 particular things that I wanted to just touch on, because I think these are really key. The first of these is support post 6-month placement. And that's really paramount to all this, because it's fantastic. We've got the employer for 6 months. We're going to help them with in-house training and outside of that. But the post 6-month placement is something which we really wanted to focus on. So there's 2 particular things that we've done to try and support with that. The first is our mentoring provision, rather than it being for 6 months, is actually a 12-month provision. So the individual will have access to a mentor for 6 further months after they've completed their placement. Now, it could well be that they're still in employment. Hopefully that's the ideal. And it could well be that they've moved on to another employment, into other work. However, they'll still have that mentor there to support and guide them. So that's a really big thing for them to have, because we know how difficult it can be when young people first enter the world of work. And the second thing that we've done is, as part of our provision, we're giving them lifetime access to our 360 extranet. Now, some of you may or may not know, but our 360 extranet is an online platform which gives young people access to a whole ample load of resource and information on various things such as mental health, finance and well-being. There's also reviews and further information on workshops they may have attended. But again, there's a couple of things on there which I think really, really are important to what they need going forward. And the first of these is we've worked and done a collaboration with a recruitment company on interview tips, but most importantly for me, assessment centers. And the reason why I mentioned that is with the world we're living in today and everything being done virtual, and for many young people, this will be their first foray into employment. They may not have ever attended an assessment center as part of their recruitment process. And if post this employment or another job down the line, it could be 2, 3, 5 years time, they may not know what to expect at an assessment center. So by having access to that bit of information, it helps them on that journey. And the second thing which is on there, which is really helpful to them, is we've done a piece of work with ACAS, who you may or may not be aware of. And they have answered some basic FAQ questions on disciplinary processes, grievance procedures, what's the minimum wage, what to expect in employment, what does a contract look like. So lots of questions, again, that young people may not necessarily know the answers to. So those are the things we've done in respect to that provision to try and make it a really rich product and offering to the young person. And then from the perspective of ourselves, we really wanted to demonstrate and show that not only are we're a very strong gateway on behalf of employers, we wanted to demonstrate how we can support a young person ourselves. So Employability UK has got some roles that are being advertised ourselves. We've had interviews already for some young people, and we're in the process of putting them through the process. But what we want to achieve and what we want to show is how we can support the young person in the 6-month process, and then hopefully offer them full-time employment within the charity at the end of their 6-month placement. Now, I want you all to just think of something, because it was something which I had in my head earlier on today, and while I was thinking it, I was saying I should say this out loud, but I'm here today gratefully representing Employability UK to all you lovely people. But imagine if 2 years or 3 years or 5 years down the line, there's a very similar presentation for something else being done. And in my place, there's an individual that came through Employability UK's placement process and is now representing the charity, having come through that. How amazing would that be? And that's the ideal goal for us internally, but that's the level and the target for all the placements that go through any employers that would come through us as a gateway. That's what we want to achieve. We want to have a candidate that's going to be an integral part of your organization and give them all the support needed along the way to get them there. So, I mean, what we want to do from an Employability UK perspective is build on the 6 years of work that we've done and to support as many young people as possible with the opportunity, the chance, and all the support that they need to enter the world of work, to be successful in it, and to showcase how well the Kickstart scheme has run and been implemented. And as a charity, with young people at the core and heart of everything we've ever done, we'd just be grateful to be a small part of that process. Thank you, everyone. And Diane, I'll pass back to yourself.
Thank you. Very, very inspiring, Dal. That was excellent. Thank you. And then I'd like to hand over now to Jack Parsons. Jack, as I've mentioned, is the UK's Chief Youth Officer. Over to you, Jack.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are we doing? And Nick, Dal, Diane, fantastic. And I echo everything you say around how important the Kickstart scheme is. So I'm Jack. I'm in my 20s. I'm a young lad, and I grew up in a council estate. I grew up with an alcoholic parent, and I was a NEET twice. The Kickstart scheme has changed the outcomes and the inspiration for a lot of young people. We at the youth group have a community of 1.7 million young people. And when the Kickstart scheme first come into play, I was a bit unsure about the scheme. I wasn't sure if it was the right thing for young people, but I'm the biggest believer that we get things wrong, and I got this wrong. The scheme and the inspiration and the hope it has built for young people across the country has been incredible. But most importantly, employers at all different sizes are taking this seriously, because they know that this will not just build hope and skill for young people, but future opportunity. And the youth group, the organisation I run, has already supported over 700 young people get into the Kickstart scheme, but also helped over 3,000 young people who are in the process of getting a job find a mentor. And to me, that is life-changing. The confidence level across the country is at all-time low. And we did some maths and asked some questions. I'm a big believer from going and having all the answers to all the questions. And before a young person joined the Kickstart scheme, their confidence of getting into employment was at 31%. We also surveyed those young people after they started their first 2 weeks on the Kickstart scheme, whether that is working at Google, Capita, or a small business local to where they live. The confidence level went up to 77% in their first 2 weeks. Now, to me, that is what I believe is success. And look, I don't know about Bitcoin. I don't know how to code, but I know what works for young people. I've been doing this for the last 5 years. And at the moment, the Kickstart scheme is such a great solution for young people, but also for employers to actually get on board and invest in a young person, invest in a young person's future, but also get the support that your organisation needs to thrive. Now, I've sat down with the Chancellor on a number of occasions, and we always start the first conversation around the Kickstart scheme and what's working and what's not. And in anything in life, there's going to be hurdles we have to overcome. And that is why joining a gateway is really good. Us at the youth group are not a gateway, but there's some fantastic gateways out there like EmployabilityUK. And I've had a number of gateways come to ask me to come and speak, but it has to be meaningful. It has to be real. And with the support of the gateway and the great work that DWP have done, I echo what Nick says. They've built this program in lockdown. There've been some teething issues, but they're fighting 13,500 new work coaches. working every day to try and support. A number of the work coaches have approached me directly, and the passion and the energy to get these young people into work, but also to help you as an employer to get the young person over the line. It's absolutely fantastic. And don't forget that these young people, yes, they might be unemployed at the moment, but 99% of these young people are talented. My youth team has spoken to a number of these young people on the phone, and they are smart, they are ambitious, they've just had a wrong turn. So I want to ask everyone, remember who gave you your first opportunity. Take a moment to remember that and how that made you feel, and what did that do for your pathway? Because every young person deserves that kickstart opportunity. And I believe everyone listening in today, whether you're Coca-Cola or Carol, you all have a role to play, and you all can make a difference to a young person. And I just want to go back to what Nick said when he got a photo from that young person, from the mum, ready for work. That environment and that hope in that photo, they say a picture can tell 1,000 words. And this program is really doing that. So I pledge for anyone who's got all the questions, if you're not sure about the program at the moment, or you want to take on a young person you don't know how to, go from having all the answers to all the questions, but start today, because I believe that this is a starting point to really help those, just like I was back in the day. I say back in the day, I'm saying it was only 5-6 years ago, who needed that hope and who needed that opportunity. So think about, what can you do today to help a Kickstarter? Thanks, Diane.
Thank you, Jack. That was brilliant. And thank you to all of our speakers, some really interesting points and some very inspiring points as well. I'm now going to ask Dal, Jack and Nick to join me in a panel to answer the questions that you're raising in the Q&A function. And I'm going to start off with one which is addressed to Jack. So Jack, you've spoken about how young people can find their duvet flip through participating on the Kickstart scheme, giving them hope, skills and opportunity. You can imagine participating in the Kickstart scheme also provides that extra duvet flip for employers too. So what do you feel are the key, what do you feel are the extra duvet flips that SMEs will gain, and why through being part of Kickstart?
So great question. I'm a big believer to flip that duvet, get out of bed, and your duvet flip on a weekday can be different to your duvet flip on a weekend, but find your duvet flip and everyone should have one. So what is the duvet flip for employers? Well, firstly, it's a no-brainer. I always say to employers, does it make commercial sense? Because at the end of the day, you've got a business to run. And this is a funded scheme by the government, by DWP and the Chancellor. It's not going to cost you, and there's little risk involved. So firstly, the duvet flip, to flip that duvet to take on a Kickstarter, it's a no-brainer. It makes commercial sense. Being an entrepreneur myself, that's the first thing I look at. Does it make commercial sense? This absolutely does. Secondly, it adds value. It's added value to your organisation. Having an extra pair of hands to support and actually help your organisation to those tasks that you haven't got time, or an extra pair of hands on social media or looking over something, is so important. So it adds value. Thirdly, reverse mentoring. I'm a big believer that we don't know all the answers to everything. And you'll be surprised on what goggles the young person's looking at something on. And your product might be targeted towards a market that they are in. So actually, is it insight? Is it youth insight? Is it actually a new pair of eyes looking at it from a different angle, from a new different generation? Are you future-proofing your product? So look at it at that point of view. Can I get a mini consultant in to help me to really break down the barriers on what my business is currently doing? And the final duvet flip is you can play your role. We all want to do good. We all want to help someone, or that's the human nature. No matter where you are, what role you're in, we all get that good feel when we can actually help someone get ahead. And this is the opportunity. There's no financial barrier in the way. Yes, there is a bit of energy and time you have to invest in, but really, you can play your role here. Like I said when I spoke, whether you're Carol or Coca-Cola, right now, you can make a difference. So it's a no-brainer. It makes commercial sense. It adds value. It's reverse mentoring, and you can do good and play your role. That's how you get your duvet flip as a Kickstart employer.
That sounds great. Some really good points. Just wanted to ask Dal, actually, from the Employability UK's point of view, given that you're hiring on Kickstart, any thoughts that you have in terms of duvet flips for Employability UK and having Kickstart placement?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the terminology, by the way, duvet flip. That's brilliant. I mean, from an Employability UK employer perspective, what I would say is it really gives you the opportunity to embed the individual within your organization, help them to understand the culture, get to learn each other, see how the fit is, and you can develop them along the way. And as Jack and Nick have very kindly already said, it's already funded. So you're getting an opportunity to do almost 6 months of development within an individual before you have to pay them yourself. And think about how far along the line, if you give them the right support, they will already have come by the time it gets to month 7 or month 1 of full-time employment. The opportunity to do that is massive. And it's one that we personally think we can't miss. We've got to take it up.
Great, thanks. Nick, was there anything you wanted to say in terms of, benefits for SMEs from Kickstart?
I'd echo two that Jack said. The first is it's an opportunity to try something completely different. Just try something new. So I saw one, because I see all the approvals that came across my desk a little while ago, that was a self-service chain of restaurants in London. And this organisation said, look, we've never tried customer hosts. It's not something we've tried before. We want to try it with Kickstart. Fabulous. Get on there. It makes your business grow. And then the other thing, and I can't, echo what Jack said enough, it's a different pair of eyes. How many times does a fresh pair of eyes, when you've been looking at a problem for so long, you can't see the wood from the trees, you get someone new that comes in and they go, I wouldn't do it like that. I do it in a different way. And we all go, oh yeah, why didn't I think of that? It is, I won't use the term no-brainer, but to be honest, if I was on the other side of the screen, I'd be thinking, yeah, I'm going to have some of this.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the reverse mentoring point is really good as well. Thank you for that. Right, our next question, and I'm going to ask Dal to answer this. I think it's addressed to Employability UK. It says, do you work with all types of companies? We have manufacturing companies on our unit.
Thanks, Diane. Yes, is the answer to that in short. We have no restrictions from an employability wraparound / gateway perspective as to who we work with. We're open to working with everybody. And I'm not sure if there might be some DWP element in there as well, which Nick might want to touch on. But from our perspective, it's open to all.
Nick, any comments from you?
No, not especially, Diane. Thanks for the chance. I mean, Dal's covered it. Sectors, sector size, get involved. The key thing for me is that I want a fabulous, diverse range of opportunities. So when a young person walks into one of my job centres, I want there to be no excuse for them not to walk out with their dream life-changing opportunity. So engineering, green, finance, IT, doesn't matter what it is. And so my words would be, we want everyone in this because our young people have got such diverse needs. What I don't want is a young person walking into a job centre and the work coach saying, yep, you can do Kickstart, you can go and work in an office. No, no, no. It's got to be about everything. So absolutely.
Brilliant. Right, my next question is for you, Nick, actually. How are the DWP going to ensure that young people get the employability skills support they need and not just cheap labour?
I think that's a damn good question, and it's something that I feel really passionate about. Actually, these are 6-month funded work placements, and at the end of them, wouldn't it be amazing if the host organisations can keep the young person on? But if they can't, at the core of the scheme is that employability. Now, there are a number of ways that we monitor that. We monitor it all the way through the application process. So my team assess the employability skills. I see all of the approvals that come through because I take a really personal interest in it, and as do others. As the bid sizes scale, they go to different levels of DWP. the biggest go to our most senior civil servant, the permanent secretary, for approval. So there is a high degree of scrutiny over that employability all the way through the process. Before a job vacancy is loaded onto our system, we check again and we keep checking, but then that whole process carries along with that young person as they go through. So even though the young person leaves the intensive work search group within Universal Credit, they will have a work coach that runs alongside them as they go through that journey. We expect that work coach to keep in touch with that young person, and if they're not getting the employability offer that we are funding as taxpayers in government, then DWP will intervene. I'm not going to go into details, obviously, but we've already had a few that have come back to us where we're not comfortable with, and in those situations where we've not been able to resolve them with the employer, we've withdrawn the grant agreement. It's as simple as that, and the young person comes back into DWP and we find them something else. So I personally and DWP are incredibly committed to having that young person after 6 months walk into a job centre and go, I'm ready, I'm up for it, look at this CV, look at the next works I've built, give me this job, it's mine, and they're gone.
Great, thank you. Dal, did you want to make a comment as well?
Yeah, I'm just echoing what Nick said, and I think it's core to the whole scheme itself is that provision. It's the support mechanism to the young people. That's the reason why it's there, because in an ideal world, yes, after 6 months, you'll take them on and it'll become a full-time role. But the reason why that's in place is if it doesn't, and they have to go elsewhere and further down their career, they've been given the right amount of support to help them on that journey. And what I would suggest, I mean, obviously our personal provision, we've done a lot of work in maximising it for young people. But what I would ask employers is, whoever you're using, make sure it's someone reputable, and you've looked into the provision to make sure it's fit for purpose to help the young person and not just there to tick a box.
Right, thank you. Jack, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I can see the passion in Nick and Dal, and my passion is the same. Anyone who's thinking this is cheap labour, get off, go away. You wouldn't put the heating on in your home and open the windows. Let's look at this a bit commercially. If you're going to train a young person in and they're going to learn your systems, learn your business, find a way to keep them. There's traineeships, there's apprenticeships, there's loads of programs. You can take them on an apprenticeship afterwards. So don't go into this as the wrong intentions. I wouldn't put the heating on and leave my window open. I really wouldn't. That would be a waste of time, a waste of 6 months, and the heat will just go out. And it's the same with employers. Take a young person on, and even if you can't financially keep them right now in 6 months, think of, okay, where could I? Could I train them up and then go and give them to one of our suppliers? Think about it. Look at it in an entrepreneurial way. This country is full of entrepreneurships, and you business leaders will know a way to keep these young people, or give them, or pass them on to another corporate that you're working in a company. So I echo, if you want to do this as cheap labour, sod off.
And can I just come back in, Diane? Can I just come back in as well? Important point. And Jack put it a lot better than I would, and I was thinking the same as he was. But the other thing to bear in mind is this is a grant and not a contract. If this is not working, we will take the grant away. Simple as that. We're not going to have conversations. We're not going to mess around with young people's futures. If it's not working, thank you. We'll have the grant away and you'll go somewhere else.
Thank you, everybody. You can see the strength of feeling, I think, on that particular one. Just a quick one for you then, Nick. Can an employer fix a probationary period under the Kickstart scheme?
Doesn't really work like that, to be honest. So the work placement is for 6 months. What I would say is that if an employer is concerned, okay, so the first and most important thing is that we have out there now a network of local district account managers that are there to help employers through this process. It's a relatively new thing. It used to be one man and a dog when I was that man and I've got a dog, but actually we've now got a network of people out there across the place, and their role is to make sure that if an employer is granted Kickstart funding, that we make sure that as DWP, we provide the very high quality applicants that employer correctly wants. So that's the first step. We won't just throw our young people at employers, because it's not fair on them and it's not fair on the employers. It's not going to work for either party. However, there will always be situations where, for whatever reason, it doesn't quite work out. Either the young person, they're not ready for the opportunity, it's not the opportunity they were anticipating, or equally, from the employer's perspective, it just isn't working. And in that situation, I would encourage the employer to have a conversation with the district account manager, DWP and the work coaches will lean in to do whatever we can to make that placement a success. But we're all adults here. We know that sometimes things just don't work out. And in that situation, if it didn't work out, then we would sensitively, obviously, withdraw that young person, give them another opportunity. And to be completely clear, just because an employer has started a young person and through nobody's fault it hasn't worked out, then that Kickstart placement is still available for that employer. Clearly, as Jack quite rightly said, you know, we conduct our due diligence checks. So we look in detail at any organisation where there is a high turnover of our young people. So there's never going to be a situation where someone can simply rotate in and out because we would withdraw the grant agreement. But ultimately, that's a conversation for the employer to have with the account manager, and we'll do everything we can to make it work.
Thank you. It's good to know those checks are in place. Another one, which is how long has a young person got to have been on universal credit to be able to apply?
So they need to be on universal credit. It's as simple as that.
So they don't have to have been on it for a period of time, from what
No.
you're saying. Right. Okay. So that's great. Thank you. And another quick one: will the scheme be extended, Nick?
I don't know. I really don't know. It's not a question for me. You'd be better to ask Jack, because it sounds like Jack speaks with the
Jack, your
Chancellor.
views on this, please.
Yeah, so I sat down with the Chancellor 2 weeks ago and I directed the question right at him. Will the Kickstart scheme be extended? And the answer is we've still got 100,000 opportunities first. So why are we trying to bring more eggs into the kitchen when we've still got omelettes to make? So we've got 100,000 opportunities there. Let's get them filled. And then on the review, the Chancellor said, and you can go and watch it on my LinkedIn, the Chancellor said, then there is the possibility to extend.
Great. So we've got to use it basically, and then we'll get some more of it. I'm going to ask you the question, Jack. I know the focus of this session is for employers. From the youth perspective, how can third sector youth-focused organisations encourage and support young people to access Kickstart placements?
So you have to, firstly, any organisation wanting to support their local communities to get young people involved, is we have to break it down on what it all means. And there's a bit of confusion at the moment. I don't believe, from a young person's point of view, that there's been the right marketing done when it comes from outside of DWP. Inside DWP, brilliant. Outside, I think we have a role to play. Anyone with a big community, we need to put some resources and break it down on what it means to the young person and what does that look like. Also, I'm big on navigation. Young people really struggle with navigation because there's so much going on. So we have to help them navigate. We have to also break down the stigma that the job centre is a scary place. It's not. And if you're not on universal credit, or you are and you're embarrassed, or we have to help lift that young person up and support them. So we have to say it's fine to go to your job centre and talk about the Kickstart and encourage. And also, if you've got any Kickstarters already started, let them be the ambassadors for this. Let other Kickstarters lead the way. And that would be my advice. So we must break down the doors and help the young person navigate, explain that actually this is a good thing and the job centre is not a gloomy place and it's actually a place you can go and get support from a job coach. And then thirdly, let the young people speak to the young people.
That's a great point, really good point, thank you. I'm now going to ask, there's a really great question here, so I'm going to start with Nick. So this is a question for each of the panel. What was your first employment opportunity and how did it make you feel?
Oh, well, I've not got a good experience then.
Okay.
So my first employment opportunity was, I'll be careful, I won't say who it was with. I did 4 weeks in advertising sales, and it was the worst 4 weeks of my life. It is the only, and thank God for this, to be honest, it's the only working environment where I've ever been sworn directly at. And it was horrendous. So I'm sorry, it's not a good opportunity, apart from, I guess, when I was 13, I did do a paper round, and that was a good opportunity because I got out on my bike a lot. But other than that, yeah, my first one wasn't a good one.
Okay, Dal, how about you?
Yeah, probably not a great experience either, to be honest. My first opportunity was when I think I was around 18 years old. And I've come from a fortunate background, let's just say. I know there's other people that have been through some more difficult a lot of times than I have, and my parents were always saying, well, you don't get a job, you don't do this. So I made the point of saying I can get a job in a day. So I went through the Leicester Mercury, because I'm Leicester based, and I went through all the jobs. I rang every single person on there, and on the same day I ended up getting an interview with the local golf club and working in the restaurant. I ended up working there for 2 days and quit because I didn't want to work anyway. It was just to prove them wrong. So probably not a good experience either. I think we'll swiftly pass over to Jack.
Over to you, Jack, then.
So to reflect on Nick's and Dal's point, this is where we have to make the experience meaningful. And this is where the employer can play the role. And actually, let's make it the best experience. So if you've had a bad experience growing up, and when you had your work experience, let's make this the best opportunity. Let's make the Kickstart actually a Kickstart opportunity in a meaningful way. My experience has made me who I am. And it was in an insurance broker locally to home in Essex, if anyone can't already tell by the voice. And I had the opportunity to put a second-hand suit on, get up in the morning. I didn't know about the duvet flip then, but I did flip the duvet. And I went to this organisation. It had 40 employees, so it was a small organisation. And my job was picking up the call and trying to find some leads for the organisation and then passing them over to the sales team to quote. And I absolutely loved it because it gave me the opportunity to surround myself with diversity of thought, older people around the table who could teach me stuff in life that I didn't know. Secondly, it built my confidence. I had speech therapy until the age of 8. So it helped me build my confidence and build that on the phone. And thirdly, it gave me something on my CV, because this was an apprenticeship opportunity and I was paid £2.50 an hour back then, to go and then get into recruitment to lead on to building this multinational organisation that I run. Not everyone wants to be the CEO. I don't want to be the CEO of my organisation at the moment, but it gave me the journey to go and lead the pathway to what I'm doing. So my experience was a meaningful and honest experience. I didn't expect to be the CEO overnight. I knew my role would be in a remit, but they was fair and they was transparent with me on what I was there to do, and I loved it.
That's great, great story, thank you. Right, question for Nick, I think. How does Kickstart job match? Is it the usual job interview process?
I don't think I quite understand the question, Diane.
Right, okay.
Just ask it again.
So the question actually says, how does Kickstart job match? Is it the usual? I'm guessing it's the interview process, is the process of getting a Kickstart.
Yeah. So the way that it will work. I'm sorry for whoever asked the question. I might not answer it very well, but let me give my interpretation. The way that it works is the work coach gets between 48 and 72 hours notice that a Kickstart placement is going live. Now, if we were working in normal times, if I was a work coach team leader, I'd be standing in my job centre and I'd be saying to my work coaches, right, we've got 20 brilliant opportunities for young people. Go through your caseload. Who have you got? Who's suitable? Who's ready? Because I think the other point to bear in mind, and Jack kind of referenced in it, is an important point to make. Kickstart's a fantastic scheme, and I wouldn't be on it if it wasn't, because I only do things I enjoy doing. But it's not for everyone, because some of our young people are just not right. They're not at that stage. They need a bit more confidence building before they can make that step. And it's for the work coach then to look through their work, their intensive case and say, right, who do I think would be good for this opportunity? They'll have a conversation with that young person and they will then make referrals. They will refer the young person to the employer, if that makes sense. Oh, sorry. They'll refer the young person to the vacancy. It's then for the young person, with our support if necessary, to apply for that vacancy. And then the employer selects the young person from the selection of people the DWP will send. It's very flexible. So if we're not sending enough, or equally, if the employer is finding that the quality of the applications they're getting aren't quite what they need, that's a conversation with their district account manager. We can be flexible around closing dates, flexible around the job placement template, which is basically the job description. So broadly speaking, Diane, that's what I understand the question to be.
Okay, just thank you very much, Nick. Just to the person who asked the question, if we haven't interpreted your question correctly, in fact, I think, can you let us know? I've got, thanks, Nick, you've answered it beautifully, so that's great. So one for Dal now. Am I right in thinking that a gateway such as EmployabilityUK will help SMEs plan and structure how the first 6 months might look to ensure that both the employer and the young person is aiming for a permanent job after that period?
Yeah, good question. So the provision itself, which, as I mentioned, you can see on the EmployabilityUK website, there are certain elements to it which are fixed irrespective. So, for example, attending a live workshop, which is done on a monthly basis, is there for them. But there's elements to our provision which are bespoke based on the employer and the employee's needs. So a couple of examples I'll give to that. One which I mentioned earlier in the call is the mentoring program, which is 6 months alongside the individual, 6 months thereafter. That'll be based on any particular needs they've got. But the other one, which I haven't mentioned yet, is the personal development plan, which again is done in conjunction with the employee and from any input that the employer's got to help them with where they want to go, and whether that's from an employer perspective as well, incorporated into that. It's done based on conversations with the individual. So there's elements to it that are bespoke, and then there's elements to it which are fixed, so to speak.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Quick one for Nick, and Jack might want to come in on this. So how are young people being supported during the recruitment process?
For Kickstart, again, it's the reason we don't get this question a lot, but we have had questions in the past about, well, why can't a young person just approach an employer directly? And the reason for that is the gateway, in the broader Oxford English term rather than Kickstart gateway, the gateway to the Kickstart scheme for a young person is their work coach. The ethos of universal credit is that the work coach is at the heart of the young person's journey off benefits into a career, their dream job, all of that sort of stuff. So it's the work coach that provides that wraparound support. The work coach should not be referring the young person to a vacancy unless they've had that conversation virtually face to face. They're comfortable and confident that it's the right opportunity for the young person. And that work coach, as we said, will stay, you know, a feature of the universal credit is that the young person is wedded to that work coach for their entire journey through the benefit system and into work. So it's in that individual relationship, and whatever other support we can provide via the Job Centre network, we provide as we can.
Great, thanks. Jack, your thoughts?
Yeah, I love what Nick says, and I've seen it firsthand, and we echo what he said with the work coaches really paying attention and supporting. But also we have to be realistic in terms of the employer side. DWP are doing everything they can and following a pattern. It's down to you to give a bit of love and care. Now, we have to lead with best practice. There is going to be some employers, when they get a young person come to them or excited, they're not going to be able to handle that that young person in the right way, or they think they are and they're not. Hence why the gateway is so important, to act as that support to you, because how do you actually let down a young person? They're not ready. In terms of the Kickstart scheme, like I said when I spoke, I weren't too sure on the Kickstart scheme when it was first announced by the Chancellor, and I've told him that, but it's changed my mind. I got it wrong, and that's when we said every Kickstarter applying for a Kickstart role through our support network and in our community would get a mentor for 12 months, regardless if they got that job or not, to build encouragement and support. And that's why over 3,000 young people who have applied for Kickstarter roles have got access to a mentor through us. So every employer has their role to play. If you've got 20 young people applying in partnership with the Gateway, you've only got 2 vacancies, what can you do with the 18? How can you keep them continue to apply for other Kickstart roles? Could you give them some financial well-being? Could you get them on a call and say, look, this is the situation? Could you give feedback? I'm big on feedback. And actually supporting the young person? Or could you actually, I said it on BBC, and this is not for everyone, but rip up the CV and actually ask for a video showcase, or ask them to put together what they would do if they were CEO for the day? Could we change the system on what is the entry process for this to actually get young people to overcome those barriers? It's very tough to apply for a role when you've been knocked down by Indeed or all these job boards for years, for the last 6 months, 7 months. It's very tough. So we have to encourage the young person for applying in the first place, but we have to start with best practice. But unfortunately, that is not the case with all employers, unfortunately, we've seen already. So the employer has to step up. DWP are stepping up. the gateways are stepping up. Employers have to do their role as well, unfortunately.
Thank you, Jack. That's great. I'm going to finish on two very quick questions for Nick before we sort of finish the session. Firstly, how long will it take for a young person if you start the process today?
Say again, Diane, you broke
Sorry,
up.
Basically, how long does the process take to get a young person in place?
Well, a lot of that depends on the employer and what they want, to be honest. So the reality is, if you come direct to DWP as our service standard is that we will get through an application in a calendar month. In practice, we get through a lot faster than that, unless there's anything contentious and we need to speak to the employer or the gateway. But then it depends very much on when the employer wants the vacancy. So if, for argument's sake, Diane, you came to us and said, right, we'd like a young person now, and you've been through the process, we'd have a conversation with you about what your start date was. Typically, we would allow about 6 weeks for between the work coach knowing that you wanted the job and the job starting. And that is simply because it takes that amount of time for the work. It doesn't take 6 weeks for the work coach to do everything. But by the time actually we got into a rhythm of the work coach looking at the young person taking the time to apply, the employer sifting, the employer having the conversation, it would be about 6 weeks, but it could be less than that. So if an employer came to us once they were approved and said, look, we'd like someone next week, then we would do absolutely everything we could to fill that. But as a ballpark guide, about 6 weeks. But I need to stress that is the kind of average in terms of it taking that amount of time for the referrals to come through, the application, the recruitment process, because it is like applying for a job, and that doesn't happen in a day and a half.
Yeah, thank you. And very quickly, can the young person go straight to an apprenticeship after their placement ends?
Yes.
Great, fantastic. Right, we are about out of time. Thank you so much to our speakers on the panel. It's been fabulous to hear your thoughts. If there are any questions you don't think we've covered, please do go to our Kickstart hub page, which is on our website. That will have a lot more information. If you're interested in applying to us as a gateway, please use the inquiry form on the hub. We are basically here. We can answer any questions you have via that. And thank you everybody for coming. We feel we're all in this to help young people, to help them succeed with more resilience, more confidence, and better experience. And in offering a young person a placement, you are giving them hope for their future and a chance to change their life. So let's give them that hope. Let's be heroes and let's offer that place to them. And I'll leave you with some thoughts on that.